The massive space station hung in the void like a crystal flower made of metal and light. Nexus 7 was the pride of the Galactic Council, where hundreds of alien species met to discuss trade, peace, and the future of their corner of the universe. Today, something new was coming to visit. Dae-ho Kim adjusted his formal blue uniform and looked out the window of the human transport ship. The space station was bigger than any city on Earth. Lights blinked across its surface like stars, and ships from dozens of worlds docked at its many ports. This was humanity's first official visit to the Galactic Council, and Dae-ho felt the weight of representing his entire species. "Are you nervous?" asked So-Jin Park, the team's science expert. She was young but brilliant, chosen to share human knowledge with alien civilizations. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore the same blue uniform as the rest of the diplomatic team. Dae-ho smiled warmly at her. "A little. But this is exciting too. We're about to meet beings from other worlds." Behind them, Taemin Lee checked his tablet for the 100th time. As their military advisor, he was responsible for their safety, though no one expected trouble at a diplomatic meeting. The briefing says we'll meet 3 main species today. The Vauthic are like living crystals. The Kellari share one mind across many bodies, and the Jef are made of pure energy. "Fascinating," So-Jin said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Imagine what we could learn from each other." Their ship docked with a soft thud. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were smooth and white, with soft lights that changed color as they walked. Other beings moved through the hallways, some tall and thin, others short and round, many completely unlike anything from Earth. A floating sphere of blue light approached them. It pulsed gently as it spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, humans. I am Guide Unit 7. Please follow me to the council chamber." They walked through corridors filled with wonders. Gardens grew under artificial suns, tended by beings with 2 many arms. Pools of liquid mercury held creatures that looked like silver fish. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet that none of them could identify. "This place is amazing," So-Jin whispered, smiling broadly as she watched a group of small, furry aliens play what looked like chess with floating pieces. The guide unit's light flickered slightly. "You bear your dental structures frequently. Is this a threat display among your species?" Dae-ho blinked in surprise. "What? Oh, you mean smiling?" "No, it means we're happy or friendly." "I see," the guide unit said, though its tone suggested it didn't understand at all. They entered the council chamber, a vast room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 3 sections held the alien representatives. In one area, beings that looked like walking crystals sat in perfect stillness. Their bodies caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns. In another section, dozens of insect-like creatures moved in perfect coordination, their actions so synchronized they seemed like one organism. The third area held floating orbs of various colored lights, pulsing in complex patterns. "Honored representatives," announced a towering crystal being. "We welcome the humans to Nexus 7. I am Zethmar, speaker for the Vorthic Empire." Dae-ho stepped forward and bowed respectfully. When he straightened, he wore his most diplomatic smile. "Thank you for receiving us. I'm Ambassador Dae-ho Kim, representing Earth and all human colonies." A wave of movement passed through the crystal beings. Their light patterns shifted to colors that seemed harsh and warning-like. In the insect section, thousands of creatures stopped moving at exactly the same moment, all turning to stare at the humans with multifaceted eyes. "Your expression," buzzed a voice from the Kellari section. "We have studied 847 known species. In all cases, the display of dental weapons indicates hostile intent." So-Jin laughed softly, the sound musical in the vast chamber. Dental weapons? You mean our teeth? She smiled even more broadly. Humans smile when we're happy. It's how we show friendship. The reaction was immediate. The Kellari drones clicked and chittered in agitation. The Vorthit crystals rang like warning bells. Even the energy beings pulsed in rapid, alarmed patterns. You display attack formation while speaking. Of friendship? Asked a red light from the Jeff Collective. This is most ... unusual. Tae Min stepped closer to his colleagues, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm, though he didn't draw it. Something was wrong here, but he couldn't identify the threat. Please, there's been a misunderstanding, Daeho said, maintaining his calm diplomatic expression. Humans evolved from omnivores, yes, but we use our facial expressions to communicate emotion. A smile shows positive feelings. Omnivores, repeated Sethmar slowly, predators who also consume plant matter. And you show your ... fangs when experiencing positive emotions. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds strange, Sojin admitted, still smiling. But yes, that's correct. We smile when we're happy, when we meet friends, when we're enjoying ourselves. The alien representatives exchanged what could only be described as worried glances, though their methods of communication were unlike anything human. The crystals chimed in patterns too complex to follow. The Kellari swarm moved in waves that looked like a disturbed ocean. The energy beings flashed in rapid sequences. Perhaps, said Zethmar carefully, we should proceed with the formal presentations. We are ... eager to learn more about human customs. For the next 2 hours, the humans presented their culture, technology, and history. They shared images of Earth's cities, its art, its people at work and play. Throughout it all, they smiled. Naturally, as humans do when they're excited about sharing something they love, the aliens watched in growing confusion and fear. Here was a species that showed their teeth when looking at babies. They displayed their fangs while helping others. They bared their dental weapons while creating beautiful music and art. Your species finds joy in many activities, observed the Jeff representative. Even dangerous ones? Oh yes, Tae Min replied with enthusiasm. Humans enjoy challenges. We climb mountains, explore deep oceans, even jump out of aircraft for fun. You ... jump from flying vehicles ... for entertainment? The crystal beings. Voice rose in pitch. With parachutes, Sojin added helpfully, grinning at the memory of her own skydiving experience. It's quite thrilling. The session ended with formal politeness, but the humans could sense tension in the air. As they were escorted back to their ship, Daeho noticed groups of aliens speaking in hushed tones, their attention focused on the human delegation. Did I imagine it? Or were they afraid of us? So Jin asked once they were safely aboard their transport. Not afraid, Tae Min said thoughtfully. Wary, like they were trying to figure out if we were a threat. Daeho looked back at the massive station as their ship pulled away. Maybe they just need time to understand us better. First contact is never easy. Behind them, in the council chamber, emergency sessions were already being called. The alien leaders needed to discuss what they had learned about humanity. The species that smiled while speaking of friendship, that showed their teeth while helping. Others that found joy in activities that would terrify most civilized beings. The Galactic Council had seen many species join their ranks. Warriors who conquered through strength. Traders who built empires through commerce. Scientists who advanced through knowledge. But never had they encountered a species that seemed so contradictory, so alien in their thinking as the human ship disappeared into hyperspace. Heading back to Earth with news of successful first contact, the aliens began to plan. They needed to understand these humans better. They needed to know if that smile truly meant friendship, or if it meant something far more dangerous. The human colony ship New Sol drifted through space like a small city among the stars. Inside its metal halls, Dr. Yoon Young Choi packed her research materials with careful hands. As humanity's leading expert on alien cultures, she had been chosen to lead the first cultural exchange programs with their new galactic neighbors. The Vorthik have agreed to let us study their crystal growing techniques, she told her assistant, while checking her notes. And the Kalari want to learn about human art and music. What she didn't know was that hidden in the ship's cargo bay, a shape-shifting alien watched her every move. Rthek of the Vorthik had taken the form of a maintenance robot, his crystal body compressed into metal and circuits. The Galactic Council had sent him to study humans in their natural environment. To understand their strange behavior patterns, Rthek found humans deeply disturbing. Every day, he watched them bare their teeth at each other in what they called greeting. They showed their fangs when they were happy, when they were excited, when they were being kind to others. It made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about predator species. The ship arrived at Kepler 442b, a human colony world that had been terraformed over the past 50 years. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, much like the Earth that Rthek had studied in the alien databases. But as their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Rthek noticed something that made his crystalline core vibrate with alarm. The humans had built their cities next to active volcanoes. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" said the shuttle pilot, a cheerful woman named Mira Song. She smiled broadly as she pointed to a massive volcanic peak that glowed red. Against the evening sky, Mount Sejong erupted just last month, made quite a light show. "You live near active volcanoes?" asked Dr. Choi, though she seemed more curious than concerned. "Oh yes," Mira replied with obvious pleasure. "The geothermal energy powers half the colony. Plus, the soil is incredibly fertile. We grow the best vegetables in this whole system." Rthek recorded this information with growing horror. Humans didn't just tolerate danger, they smiled while embracing it. They built their homes next to geological disasters and seemed happy about it. The colony was full of wonders and terrors. Thek watched human children play in parks where Earth predators roamed freely. Dogs and cats, creatures that would be classified as dangerous beasts on most worlds, were treated as family members. The humans smiled while petting animals that could easily kill them. "Those are beautiful creatures," Dr. Choi said to a colonist who owned several large dogs. "What do you call them?" "German shepherds," the man replied, grinning as one of the massive animals licked his face with a tongue the size of Vente's entire hand. "They're great with kids, very protective." Thek noted that the human showed his teeth, while a predator animal put its mouth near his face. Either humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both. But the real shock came when Thek witnessed human recreation activities. Jae Sung-han was a typical colonist, working as an engineer in the geothermal plants. He was young, strong, and had the kind of easy smile that Ethek had learned to associate with human friendliness. On his day off, Jae-sung decided to go bungee jumping. Thek followed at a distance as Jae-sung traveled to a massive canyon. Outside the city, a platform had been built at the very edge of a cliff that dropped 200 meters straight down. Other humans gathered there, all showing their teeth in excitement. "First time?" asked the jump instructor, a woman who seemed completely unconcerned about throwing people off cliffs. "Yes," Jae-sung replied, grinning widely. "I've been looking forward to this for months." Thek watched in amazement as Jae-sung allowed the humans to tie a long elastic cord to his legs. The engineer smiled and laughed as he walked to the edge of the platform, looking down at the rocks far below. "See you at the bottom," Jae-sung called to his friends, flashing them a brilliant smile, and he jumped. "Vix, Sensors nearly overloaded as he watched the human plummet toward certain death, screaming with what could only be described as joy. The elastic cord caught him just meters from the canyon floor, bouncing him up and down like a toy on a string. When Jae-sung was finally pulled back to the platform, his face was bright red from the blood rushing to his head, and he was smiling, so widely that Ethik could count every one of his teeth. That was incredible. Jae-sung shouted, hugging the jump instructor. "Can I go again?" This was not normal behavior for any known species. Thek had studied the psychology of 847 different civilizations. Most rational beings avoided death. They feared it, ran from it, built elaborate safeguards against it. But humans seemed to dance with death for entertainment, and they smiled while doing it. The pattern continued everywhere Thek looked. He watched human mechanics smile cheerfully while repairing fusion reactors that could vaporize half the colony if something went wrong. He saw doctors grin while treating diseases that would terrify most galactic species. He observed human parents beam with pride as their children learned to drive vehicles at speeds that would be considered reckless anywhere else. The most disturbing incident happened during a routine maintenance emergency at the power plant. A coolant leak had triggered automatic shutdowns, but someone needed to go into the reactor chamber manually to reset the systems. The radiation levels were dangerous, even with protective suits. Mira Song, the same pilot who had flown them to the colony, volunteered for the job. "I know those systems better than anyone," she said, smiling calmly as she put on the heavy radiation suit. "I'll have it fixed in 20 minutes. Thek watched through security cameras as Mira entered the reactor chamber. The radiation readings were high enough to kill most aliens within hours, but she moved through the dangerous environment with the confidence of someone taking a walk in the park. She hummed softly to herself as she worked, occasionally smiling at some private joke. When a warning alarm indicated that radiation levels were spiking to lethal levels, most species would have fled. Mira simply worked faster, her movements calm and precise. She finished the repairs with barely a minute to spare before the safety systems would have sealed the chamber permanently. As she emerged from the reactor room, she pulled off her helmet and grinned at the crowd of worried colonists. "All fixed," she announced cheerfully. "Should be good for another year." The colonists cheered and applauded, many of them smiling as broadly as Mira herself. They showed their teeth in celebration of someone who had just risked her life to save their power grid. Rethek transmitted his findings back to the Galactic Council with growing alarm. The humans weren't just predators who smiled while being friendly. They were predators who smiled while doing things that would kill most other species. They found joy in danger, pleasure in risk, and satisfaction in facing death itself. His report painted a picture of a species so alien in their thinking that they defied every known psychological model. Humans didn't just tolerate extreme environments. They chose to live in them. They didn't just survive dangerous situations. They created them for fun. They didn't just coexist with predators. They invited them into their homes and families. Most terrifying of all, they did all of this while smiling. The expression that should have warned of imminent attack instead indicated genuine happiness and contentment. Humans showed their teeth when they were at their most relaxed and friendly. On worlds across the galaxy, alien intelligence analysts read Thek's reports with growing dread. If humans smiled when they were being kind and helpful, what did they do when they were angry? If they found joy in activities that would terrify most civilizations, what would they consider a real challenge? The Galactic Council began to understand that they weren't dealing with a typical predator species. Predators were straightforward. They hunted, they killed, they dominated. Humans were something far more complex and dangerous. They were predators who chose to be gentle, killers who preferred to heal, warriors who wanted to be friends, and that smile That terrible, wonderful smile was their way of showing the galaxy that they meant no harm. The aliens realized they were facing something unprecedented, a species that was genuinely, authentically kind, while being capable of surviving in conditions that would destroy entire civilizations. The human smile wasn't a threat display. It was an invitation to friendship from the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. That, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all. The border system between human and Kalari space buzzed with tension like a wire pulled too tight. 3 months of arguing over mining rights to the asteroid belt had brought both species to the edge of their first real conflict. The Kalari collective consciousness was convinced that the humans were planning treachery, while the humans remained frustratingly peaceful and reasonable. Commander Bo-Ram Kong stood on the bridge of the destroyer, Bison's Pride, watching the Kalari fleet take defensive positions across the system. 50 ships, each one designed like a giant insect with metal wings and sharp edges. They moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind, which Bo-Ram knew they were. "They're scared," said her communications officer, Lieutenant Jun Ho-Yoon. "Every transmission from their fleet sounds more paranoid than the last." Bo-Ram smiled slightly, expression that would have sent chills through any watching alien. But her crew saw only their captain's confidence in a difficult situation. "Fear makes everyone dangerous. Keep our weapons powered down and maintain distance. We're here to talk, not fight." The Kalari flagship, a massive creature of metal and ceramic, that looked like a space-born praying mantis, moved closer to the human fleet. Its hull bristled with weapons that could reduce a planet to ash. From its communications array came the voice of Hive Admiral Decanal, speaking for millions of connected minds. "Human vessels, you have violated the agreed boundary. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." Bo-Ram activated the communication system, her tone calm and professional. "Admiral Vecnal, we're here for the scheduled mining rights discussion. Our ships are exactly where the treaty says they should be. Your presence here is a provocation," the Kalari Admiral replied. "We know your species. You show your fangs while speaking of peace. You smile while planning violence. I assure you, Admiral, we have no hostile intentions." Bo-Ram's smile widened slightly as she spoke, a natural human response to stress and an attempt to project calm. "We simply want to reach a fair agreement about the asteroid mining." Across space, thousands of Kalari drones recoiled at the sight of the human commander's bared teeth. In their hive mind, alarm bells rang like a chorus of terror. The human was showing clear signs of aggression while claiming peaceful intent. Situation might have escalated into violence, but the universe had other plans. The system star, a young and unstable giant, chose that moment to release a massive solar flare. Radiation and charged particles burst outward like an invisible tsunami, racing toward both fleets at the speed of light. "Solar storm incoming," shouted the human sensor operator. "Radiation levels will be lethal in 4 minutes." The human ships immediately began emergency procedures, their crews working with practiced efficiency. But the Kalari fleet, caught off guard by the natural disaster, found themselves in deadly trouble. Their ships' shields were designed to stop weapons, not stellar radiation. 3 of their vessels, including a transport carrying civilian technicians, were caught in the direct path of the storm. Bo-Ram didn't hesitate for even a second. "All ships, emergency rescue protocol. Get those Kalari to safety." "But Commander," her tactical officer protested, "they're our enemies. This could be our chance to." "They're people in danger," Bo-Ram interrupted, her smile replaced by grim determination. "We save them first, settle politics later." The human fleet surged forward, their ships racing toward the disabled Kalari vessels as deadly radiation approached from behind. Medical Officer Wu Jin-nam worked frantically to prepare the medical bay for alien casualties, reviewing everything known about Kelari biology. Captain Hyen Soo-yoon pushed his escort frigate Daegu's Defender to its limits, his face tight, with concentration as he calculated intercept courses. The radiation storm was moving faster than anyone had expected. The Kelari civilian transport wouldn't make it to safety in time. "I can reach them," Hyan-su reported over the com. "But I'll have to take my ship into the radiation field. We might not make it out." "Do it," Bio-ram ordered without hesitation. Hyan-su smiled grimly as he pushed his engines past their safety limits. The smile wasn't for his crew or the watching. Aliens. It was the expression humans wore when they were about to do something incredibly dangerous for all the right reasons. "Hold on, everyone," he announced to his crew. "We're going into the storm." The frigate dove into the expanding cloud of radiation, its shields blazing with energy as they deflected the worst of the stellar wind. Hyan-su guided his ship with the skill of someone who had trained for exactly this situation, weaving between radiation pockets that could have fried their electronics. The Kelari transport was spinning helplessly, its engines dead and its crew unconscious from radiation. Poisoning. Hyan-su brought his ship alongside and activated the docking clamps, even as his own radiation alarms screamed warnings. "Got them," he reported, his voice calm despite the fact that his ship was being bombarded with enough radiation to kill. Everyone aboard, bringing them home. The trip back to safety was a nightmare of failing systems and rising radiation levels. But Hyan-su kept smiling, that strange human expression that meant they were facing death with determination, rather than fear. His crew worked around him with quiet efficiency. Following their captain's example, they made it back to the human fleet with minutes to spare. As the Kelari survivors were transferred to the medical bay, Wu Jin-nam worked for the next 2 days straight, using every piece of medical knowledge available to save alien lives. He smiled gently at each patient as they recovered, his expression soft with genuine care. The Kelari didn't understand. They had expected treachery, betrayal, or at minimum some kind of demand for payment. Instead, the humans had risked their own lives to save people they barely knew from a species that considered them enemies. "Why?" asked one of the recovering Kelari technicians, his compound eyes fixed on Wu Jin's face. "Why did you save us?" Wu Jin smiled that warm, gentle expression that had terrified so many aliens. "Because you needed help. That's what people do for each other." The technician's translation device struggled with the concept. In the Kelari language, there was no word for the kind of selfless altruism that Wu Jin described. Their hive mind had evolved for efficiency and survival, not for helping strangers. News of the rescue spread through both fleets. The human crews continued their normal routines, occasionally smiling as they discussed the successful mission. To them, saving the Kelari had been the obvious thing to do. They couldn't understand why the aliens seemed so shocked by basic decency. But for the Kelari collective consciousness, the rescue was deeply disturbing. They had prepared for human aggression, human cunning, human violence. They had expected the species that showed their fangs while claiming friendship to reveal their true nature when given the opportunity. Instead, they had seen humans risk everything to save strangers. The same creatures who smiled while discussing their own dangerous recreational activities had smiled while rushing into lethal radiation to help others. Admiral Vicknall found himself in the unprecedented position of owing his enemies a debt that could never be repaid. Worse, he couldn't understand their motives. The human commander had risked her entire fleet to save a handful of Kelari civilians. She had gained nothing from it except the gratitude of people who had been pointing weapons at her just hours before. "The mining rights," Vicknall transmitted to Bio-ram after the radiation storm had passed. We are willing to negotiate new terms. Paorem smiled, that terrible, wonderful expression that meant she was genuinely pleased. I'm glad to hear it, Admiral. I think we can find a solution that works for everyone. The subsequent negotiations were unlike anything in galactic history. The humans offered fair terms, reasonable compromises, and genuine partnership opportunities. They smiled throughout the discussions, their expressions showing honest pleasure at finding ways to help both species benefit from the asteroid mining. The Kalari collective mind was in chaos. Everything they thought they knew about Predator species was wrong. Predators were supposed to be selfish, aggressive, interested only in their own survival and dominance. But humans seemed to find genuine joy in helping others, even former enemies. Reports of the incident spread through alien intelligence networks like wildfire. The species that smiled while facing death had smiled while saving lives. The creatures who showed their fangs when happy had used those same expressions, while risking everything for strangers. Military analysts across the galaxy updated their threat assessments of humanity. They had been prepared for human aggression, human expansion, human conquest. But how do you defend against a species that conquers through kindness? How do you fight enemies who would rather save your life than take it? The Galactic Council received detailed reports of the rescue mission with growing alarm. The humans hadn't just helped the Kalari out of strategic calculation or diplomatic advantage. They had done it because they thought it was the right thing to do. That level of genuine altruism, combined with the tactical skill they had shown during the rescue, made humans more dangerous than any conqueror the galaxy had ever seen. A species that powerful, that capable, that willing to help others, could reshape the entire balance of galactic civilization. Deep beneath the surface of Nexus 7, in chambers that few beings knew existed, the Galactic Council held its most secret meeting in 1,000 years. The room was dark, except for the glow of alien technologies and the nervous energy patterns of terrified leaders. 3 species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries were now discussing the end of everything they knew. Zethmar's crystal body rang with harmonics of fear as he projected intelligence reports into the center of the chamber. The human threat grows daily. Our agents report increasingly disturbing activities across their colonies. Hive Admiral Deconal's consciousness buzzed with the voices of 1,000,000 connected minds, all sharing the same dread. They have turned mercy into a weapon. Our own people speak of human kindness with something approaching worship. It is contaminating our collective thoughts. The Zeph representative, a swirling mass of red energy called Morgan, pulsed with anxious light patterns. We have analyzed 17 human colonies. Each one is built on what other species would classify as uninhabitable death worlds. They call these places home and smile while doing it. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Human colonies thrived on planets with poisonous atmospheres, extreme gravity, and radiation levels that would sterilize most known life forms. They had built cities in the hearts of active volcanic regions and underwater settlements in oceans full of predators that would make other species flee in terror. Show them the Australian data, Zethmar commanded. A hologram appeared showing footage from humanity's home world. The recording had been taken by hidden Vorthic surveillance devices and showed a human teacher named Sunny Lim giving a lesson to a group of young alien exchange students. And here we have some of Australia's native wildlife, Sunny said, cheerfully, her smile bright and welcoming as she displayed images of creatures that looked like nightmares, given physical form. This is a huntsman spider. They're quite friendly, really. We often find them in our homes. The alien students in the recording scrambled backward in terror as the image showed a spider the size of a dinner plate. Sun-Hee continued smiling as she showed more pictures. This is a box jellyfish. Their sting can kill a human in minutes. but they're beautiful to watch in the water. And this is a saltwater crocodile. They can grow to 7 meters long and have one of the strongest bite forces on Earth. One of the alien students, a young Vorthik, made a sound like breaking crystal. How do humans survive on such a world? Sun He's smile grew even brighter. Oh, we've learned to coexist with most of our wildlife. Australians are quite good at living alongside dangerous creatures. Some people even keep snakes as pets. The recording ended with several alien students fainting. Sun He continued smiling throughout, completely unaware that she had just described what most species would consider a planetary-scale biological weapon facility. This is what they call normal. Mordan pulsed with horrified red light. There, children learn to coexist with creatures that would be classified as military-grade bioweapons anywhere else in the galaxy. More reports followed. Humans had domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs that lived in their homes with their children. They had created something called extreme sports, where they deliberately put themselves in mortal danger for entertainment. They climbed the mountains that could kill them, dove into deep oceans filled with predators, and launched themselves from aircraft thousands of meters above the ground. The psychological profiles make no sense, Vecano buzzed. They experience what they call adrenaline addiction. They become dependent on the biochemical response to mortal danger. They actively seek out situations that should trigger every survival instinct to flee. But the worst revelations were yet to come. Krathtel, the Council's chief military strategist, accessed files that had been gathered through months of careful intelligence work. We have discovered the truth about human military capabilities, Krathtel announced, his voice heavy with dread. They have been holding back. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of alien breathing apparatus and energy fields. Their civilian ships carry enough firepower to destroy cities. Their merchant vessels have military-grade shielding and weapon systems. Their exploration teams are trained in combat tactics that would challenge our best special forces. Images flashed through the holographic display. Human cargo ships with concealed missile batteries. Civilian transports with armor plating that could withstand direct military strikes. Research vessels equipped with sensors so advanced they could map an entire star system in hours. But surely this is normal military preparation? Zephmar asked, though his harmonic patterns suggested he already knew the answer. No, Krathtul replied grimly. We intercepted communications from their military command. These weapons and defenses were not added for war. They were built because humans assume that space is dangerous and prepare accordingly. To them, this level of armament is routine safety equipment. The implications crashed over the assembled aliens like a tsunami of terror. Humans didn't arm their civilian ships because they planned to conquer the galaxy. They did it because they assumed the universe was trying to kill them, and they wanted to be ready for anything. Their diplomats are intelligence operatives. Krathtul continued, but not in the way we understand the term. They gather information about every species they meet, not to find weaknesses to exploit, but to learn how to better help and understand those species. The final piece of evidence was the most damning of all. A recording of Ambassador Dae-Ho Kim speaking with a group of human military officers. The conversation had been captured by accident when an alien transmission had crossed human communication channels. The Galactic Council seems nervous about our capabilities, Dae-Ho was saying, his expression calm and diplomatic. Should we perhaps be more open about our defensive measures? Show them that we're not a threat? With respect, Ambassador, replied a general whose uniform bore decorations that suggested extensive combat experience. If they saw our actual military capabilities, they might panic. It's better to let them think we're just well-prepared civilians. Dae-Ho smiled that terrifying, gentle smile. You're probably right. We prefer peace, but we're very good at war when necessary. Best to keep that to ourselves until they get to know us better." The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. "They are treating us like children," Mordon pulsed with patterns of barely controlled rage. "Hiding their true strength so we won't be frightened. The psychological warfare. Implications are staggering," Decanol admitted. "They project an image of harmless friendliness while being fully capable of destroying any threat to their people. Every smile is a reminder that they choose mercy over violence." Zephmar's crystal. Form rang with the sound of breaking glass. "We have seen predators before. We have faced conquerors and tyrants and destroyers. But we have never encountered a species that terrifies us with their kindness." The strategic analysis was clear and horrifying. Humans were apex predators who had chosen to become protectors. They were killers who preferred to heal. They were conquerors who wanted to be friends. And every gentle smile was a reminder of exactly how much restraint they were showing. "The question," Krathtal said slowly, "is what happens when they stop smiling?" The council members contemplated this in growing horror. If humans smiled while facing death, while helping enemies, while living on worlds that would destroy other species, what would it take to make them angry? What would humans do when they weren't feeling friendly anymore? "We cannot allow this threat to continue," Zethmar declared, his harmonics shifting to frequencies that indicated absolute resolve. "They are too dangerous to exist. Their very existence threatens the stability of galactic civilization." "Agreed," Decanol buzzed. "The Kalari collective consciousness has analyzed all possibilities. Humans cannot be controlled, cannot be contained, cannot be reasoned with using normal diplomatic methods. They are too powerful and too kind to be allowed to spread throughout the galaxy." Mordon pulsed with crimson determination. "The Zeph Consortium concurs. We must act before they realize how frightened we are, before they decide that their mercy is misplaced." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the three most powerful civilizations agreed to launch a preemptive war against a species that had never shown them anything but friendship. They would attack without warning, overwhelm human defenses through surprise and superior numbers, and eliminate the threat that humanity represented to the established order. They failed to realize that they were about to make the worst decision in the history of the galaxy. Because soon, very soon, they would discover what humans looked like when they weren't smiling anymore, and that discovery would reshape the universe in ways that none of them could imagine. The Galactic Council had convinced themselves that humanity's greatest weakness was their kindness, their mercy, their desire to help others, even at cost to themselves. They were about to learn that humanity's kindness wasn't a weakness at all, that it was a choice, and choices could be changed. The attack came without warning on what humans would later call Black Tuesday. Across 17 star systems, Galactic Council fleets dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire on human colonies. Space stations and merchant vessels, the aliens, had planned their assault carefully, targeting civilian populations to force a quick surrender. They had made a fundamental error in judgment. Admiral Donghayan Park stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching reports flood in from across human space. His face was stone, every trace of warmth and humor gone from his expression. Around him, the staff worked with quiet, deadly efficiency, coordinating humanity's response to the unprovoked attack. For the first time since humanity had joined the galactic community, no one was smiling. "Casualty reports from the outer colonies," announced his aide, Major G1 Lee. Her voice was calm and professional, but her eyes burned with cold fury. "New Bizin is gone. Jeju Station destroyed. Merchant convoy Taybec completely wiped out." "Admiral." Park nodded grimly. 27,000 human civilians were dead, killed without warning by species they had tried to befriend. Men, women, children, entire families vaporized by alien weapons. Send word to all human fleets, Park ordered. Condition Black is now in effect. All diplomatic protocols are suspended. We are at war. The change that swept through human space was swift and absolute. The same people who had smiled while rescuing enemies and laughed while facing death now wore expressions that would have frozen the blood of any alien who saw them. The transformation was terrifying to witness. General Eugene Kim activated defense. Networks that the aliens had never suspected existed. Human colonies that appeared defenseless suddenly bristled with weapons that had been hidden in plain sight. Civilian ships shed their peaceful disguises and revealed themselves as fully armed. Warships. The Galactic Council wants to see what we're really capable of, General Kim said to her staff, her voice cold as winter space. Let's show them. General Seok Jin-oh coordinated the evacuation of remaining civilian populations while simultaneously deploying military assets that the aliens had no idea existed. Entire fleets emerged from hidden bases in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Ships that had been disguised as mining equipment and research vessels. The alien fleets had expected to face a small number of human military ships supported by lightly armed civilian vessels. Instead, they found themselves confronting a military machine that had been designed by people who assumed the universe was actively trying to kill them. Human ships moved with the precision of predators who had been pretending to be prey. Their weapons hit with the accuracy of creatures who had spent generations hunting the most dangerous game in the galaxy, each other. Their tactics showed the cunning of species that had survived ice ages, supravolcanic eruptions, and 2 world wars. Fleet. Commander Minho Jang led the counterattack from the bridge of the dreadnought Soul's Vengeance. The massive ship had been disguised as a civilian transport for 3 years, secretly moving through alien space while gathering intelligence. Now it revealed its true nature, a weapons platform that could reduce entire fleets to scrap metal. Target. The Vorthik command ship, Jang ordered, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who had stopped pretending to be harmless. Maximum firepower. The Vorthik flagship, Crystal Harmony, had been designed to intimidate through beauty, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight in dazzling patterns. It vaporized under human weapons fire in less than 3 seconds. The alien fleets suddenly realized they weren't fighting the species they thought they knew. These weren't the gentle diplomats who smiled while discussing peace treaties. These weren't the friendly explorers who rescued enemies from solar storms. These were apex predators who had been holding back out of kindness, and now that kindness was gone. Engineer Haijin Yu coordinated the activation of defense systems that redefined the meaning of overkill. Human colonies that had seemed vulnerable revealed themselves as fortress worlds with enough firepower to stop invasion fleets. Mining stations opened up to reveal hidden missile batteries. Research outposts activated sensor networks that could track enemy movements across entire star systems. The Kalari Collective consciousness experienced something it had never felt before: genuine terror. Their perfectly coordinated fleet movements, which had dominated galactic warfare for centuries, fell apart against human tactics that seemed to predict their every action. How are they anticipating our maneuvers? Hive Admiral Veckanol demanded, as his formation was torn apart by human fighters that moved like angry wasps. Our battle coordination is perfect. What Veckanol didn't understand was that humans had been studying Kalari tactical patterns since first contact, not to plan an attack, but to learn how to better protect Kalari civilians if they were ever in danger. That intelligence data was now being used to devastating effect. The tide of battle turned completely when the human reserves arrived. These weren't the ships the aliens had cataloged during diplomatic missions. These were pure warships, built by people who understood that sometimes peace could only be maintained through strength. Captain Kyung-Soo Kim brought his battle group in behind the Jeff energy fleet, his ships moving in formations that the aliens had never seen before. The humans fought like they did everything else, with absolute commitment and terrifying competence. "Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law," Kim broadcast to the alien fleets. His voice was calm, professional, and completely without mercy. "Continue fighting, and we will demonstrate why humans prefer diplomacy to war." Some alien commanders, seeing the writing on the stellar wind, began to surrender. Others fought on, driven by desperation and the hope that their superior numbers would eventually prevail. They were wrong. The war lasted exactly 43 days. In those 6 weeks, humanity revealed military capabilities that rewrote every strategic analysis in the galaxy. They fought with the efficiency of machines and the creativity of artists. They showed mercy to surrendering enemies while being absolutely ruthless toward those who continued to threaten human civilians. When the last alien fleet surrendered, the galaxy had been fundamentally changed. The 3 species that had ruled for centuries were now reduced to begging for terms from creatures they had tried to exterminate. The surrender ceremony took place on Nexus 7, in the same chamber where humanity had first been introduced to galactic civilization. But the humans who entered that room were not the same ones who had left it months before. Admiral Park stood before the defeated alien leaders, flanked by generals and admirals whose faces showed no trace of the warmth that had once characterized human diplomacy. Behind them stood the political leadership of humanity, equally grim and uncompromising. "The Galactic Council has been dissolved," Park announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Your governments will surrender unconditionally and submit to human administration until new leadership can be established." Zethmar's crystal form had lost much of its luster, and his harmonic patterns were weak with defeat. What do you intend to do with us?" For a long moment, Park stared at the alien leader with eyes that held no forgiveness. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression. Not quite a smile, but the first hint of warmth he had shown since the war began. "We're going to help you," he said quietly. "We're going to rebuild your worlds, treat your wounded, and teach you how to govern without fear." The aliens stared in disbelief. They had expected execution, slavery, or genocide. Instead, they were being offered the same kindness that humans had always shown, even to their enemies. "Why?" whispered Mordan, his energy patterns flickering with confusion. "We tried to destroy you. We killed your people." Park's expression softened further, and something that might have been the ghost of a smile appeared on his face. "Because that's what people do for each other, even when it's hard, even when they don't deserve it." Over the following months, human administrators worked to rebuild the shattered alien civilizations. The same engineers who had coordinated devastating military campaigns now focused their skills on reconstruction. The same doctors who had treated human casualties worked equally hard to heal former enemies. Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim led medical teams to alien worlds, bringing advanced human medicine to treat the wounded and sick. His smile had returned, gentle and warm, as he worked to save lives regardless of species. Ambassador Dae-ho Kim resumed his diplomatic duties. Though his role had fundamentally changed, he was no longer representing one species among many. He was helping to forge a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than fear. "We tried to show you our best side first," he said during the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. His smile was sad, but genuine as he addressed representatives from dozens of worlds. "We hope you'll give us another chance." The transformation was remarkable. Alien species that had lived in fear of each other for millennia began to cooperate under human guidance. The same beings who had once cowered in terror at human smiles now sought out human advisors and teachers. Years later, alien children would learn about the Smile War in their history classes. They would study how fear and misunderstanding had nearly destroyed galactic civilization.